While my son Derek was standing in the empty driveway of what used to be his $850,000 suburban home, holding foreclosure notices and trying to explain to his sobbing wife Rachel why the bank had just seized their house, their cars, and frozen their business accounts, I was sitting in my newly secured penthouse apartment reviewing the asset transfer documents that had just made me the sole owner of every property, business, and investment account that had been built using the financial foundation I'd provided. Over the past 25 years, finally understanding that sometimes the family members who abandon a 70-year-old woman on a dark highway at midnight during a thunderstorm are about to discover they just stranded someone with 40 years of banking expertise, unlimited access to legal resources, and the kind of financial leverage they never knew existed. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been abandoned by family members who thought you were just a burden or an inconvenience, only to discover you had more power over their financial security than they ever imagined? Share your story below, because today you're going to learn that sometimes the people who leave you stranded in the cold and rain are about to receive the most expensive lesson in family loyalty they'll ever get. This story is about the October night when I realized that my own son, the child I'd raised alone after his father walked out when Derek was only 6 years old, put through business school with money I'd earned building my career from a small-town bank teller to one of Colorado's most respected commercial lending executives, supported through his early entrepreneurial struggles when his startup ventures kept failing, and trusted with co-signatures on loans and business partnerships that represented my life's work and primary financial security, had been systematically viewing me not as his mother who deserved respect and gratitude, but as an aging liability whose needs and dignity were obstacles to his convenience and social image. When I discovered that the son I'd sacrificed everything for, taught everything I knew about business finance and investment strategies during countless evenings of homework help and career mentoring, and trusted with access to my most valuable assets during what I'd believed were collaborative business planning sessions, had been quietly telling his friends and business associates that I was becoming difficult to manage, while coordinating with his wife to minimize my involvement in family activities with the ultimate goal of eventually placing me in assisted living so they could gain complete control of the financial assets and business partnerships that my expertise and creditworthiness had made possible. My name is Dorothy Elizabeth Martinez, and at 70 years old, I thought I'd found the perfect solution for supporting my son's entrepreneurial dreams while ensuring proper succession planning by co-signing loans and entering joint business partnerships that would allow Derek to build the commercial real estate development company that had become one of Denver's fastest-growing firms. For 5 years, this financial partnership had seemed like a reasonable way for a successful banking executive to help family while maintaining close relationships with my 2 grandchildren, 8-year-old Sophia and 6-year-old Miguel. The real estate development business that everyone in Denver's commercial banking community knew as Martinez and Associates Development had actually been built on the foundation of my personal creditworthiness, my banking industry relationships, and my 40 years of experience in commercial lending that had enabled me to structure deals and secure financing that Derek's limited credit history and business experience never could have obtained independently. Every major project, every construction loan, every investor relationship had been made possible by my reputation in Colorado's banking community and my willingness to leverage my personal assets and professional relationships to support my son's business ambitions. What I hadn't expected was that Derek and his wife Rachel would view my generous financial support and business mentorship not as ongoing partnership that demonstrated family unity and mutual respect, but as temporary assistance that should automatically transition to their complete control once they'd established enough business credibility to operate independently, with my role evolving from partner to occasional advisor to eventually just grateful grandmother who should be satisfied with holiday visits and birthday cards. The commercial real estate projects that had made Derek successful throughout Denver's booming development market had been secured through my banking relationships, financed using my creditworthiness as collateral, and managed using business principles and financial strategies that I'd taught him through decades of professional experience in commercial lending and investment analysis. My decision to enter these business partnerships had been motivated by my desire to help family while creating ongoing income streams for my retirement, never imagining that my son would eventually view my continued involvement as interference, rather than valuable expertise. My background in commercial banking had begun 43 years earlier, when I'd started as a teller at First National Bank of Denver, working my way through night school to earn degrees in finance and business administration while raising Derek as a single mother and building the professional expertise that would eventually make me one of Colorado's most respected commercial lending executives. The banking industry knowledge that Derek was taking for granted had been earned through decades of analyzing complex business deals, structuring commercial loans, and understanding market dynamics that most entrepreneurs never develop even after years in the real estate business. The journey from bank teller to commercial lending executive had required extraordinary dedication and sacrifice, particularly as a single mother in the 1980s when women in banking faced significant barriers to advancement and professional recognition. I'd worked full-time during the day, attended business school classes 4 nights a week, and spent weekends studying for professional certification exams while also managing household responsibilities and ensuring that Derek had the support and guidance necessary for his academic and personal development. The First National Bank of Denver building, an imposing 30-story glass and steel structure that dominated the downtown skyline, had become my second home. During those early years, as I'd methodically advanced from teller to customer service representative, to loan officer, to assistant manager, to branch manager, to regional commercial lending director, eventually becoming senior vice president of commercial banking with responsibility for loans and credit lines totaling over $2.8 billion annually. Each promotion had required proving myself not just professionally competent, but exceptional, demonstrating mastery of complex financial regulations, market analysis, risk assessment, and client relationship management that went far beyond what was expected of my male colleagues. The banking industry in Colorado during the 1980s and 1990s had been dominated by men who often viewed women in senior positions as temporary appointments rather than permanent fixtures with legitimate expertise and authority. My specialization in commercial real estate lending had developed during the late 1980s, when Denver's commercial property market had been experiencing dramatic growth driven by energy sector expansion, technology company relocations, and population migration from other states seeking better economic opportunities and quality of life. The complexity of commercial real estate transactions had required sophisticated understanding of construction financing, development timelines, market analysis, zoning regulations, and the intricate relationships between developers, contractors, architects, and municipal planning departments. The professional reputation I'd built over decades of successful commercial lending had been based on my ability to structure deals that worked for all parties while minimizing risk and ensuring profitable outcomes for both borrowers and the bank. My clients had included some of Colorado's most successful real estate developers, construction companies, and investment groups who had learned to trust my judgment and rely on my expertise for navigating complex financing arrangements and market challenges. By the time Derek had graduated from the University of Colorado with his business degree in 2008, I had become one of the most respected commercial lending executives in the Rocky Mountain region, with professional relationships throughout the banking industry and detailed knowledge of every significant real estate development project in Denver, Boulder, Colorado Springs, and Fort Collins. My expertise in commercial real estate financing had made me an invaluable resource for developers and investors seeking funding for projects ranging from small office buildings to major mixed-use developments worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The decision to support Derek's entrepreneurial ambitions had been motivated by my understanding of the commercial real estate market's potential during the economic recovery following the 2008 financial crisis, when property values had begun to stabilize and new development, Opportunities were emerging throughout Colorado's Front Range corridor. My banking relationships and industry knowledge had positioned me perfectly to help Derek navigate the complex process of establishing a development company and securing the financing necessary for his first commercial projects. Derek's initial business plan had been ambitious but realistic, focusing on small-scale commercial developments in Denver's emerging neighborhoods where property values were appreciating, but development costs remained manageable for new companies with limited capital and credit history. His proposals had demonstrated solid understanding of market dynamics and development processes, suggesting that my years of informal business education and career mentoring had provided him with valuable foundation knowledge for real estate entrepreneurship. The first project we'd undertaken together had been a modest mixed-use development in Denver's Highland neighborhood, featuring ground-floor retail space with residential lofts above, designed to serve the area's growing population of young professionals and creative workers. The $2.8 million construction loan had been secured using my creditworthiness and banking relationships, with Derek managing the day-to-day development process while I provided oversight and financial guidance based on my decades of experience with similar projects. The Highland project had been completed 6 months ahead of schedule and $200,000 under budget, generating significant profits and establishing Derek's reputation as a competent and reliable developer within Denver's real estate community. The success had validated my decision to support his business ambitions, while demonstrating that our partnership could benefit both family relationships and financial objectives. The early success had led to increasingly ambitious projects, including a $8.5 million office complex in Denver's Tech Center, a $12.3 million retail and restaurant development in Boulder, and a $18.7 million mixed-use project in Colorado Springs that had become one of the region's most successful new commercial developments. Each project had required my banking expertise for structuring financing arrangements and my industry relationships for securing favorable loan terms and construction contracts. Over 5 years, Martinez and Associates Development had completed projects worth over $85 million, establishing Derek as one of Colorado's most promising young developers, while generating substantial profits that had enhanced my retirement security and created opportunities for even more ambitious future projects. The business had employed over 150 construction workers, architects, engineers, and administrative staff, contributing significantly to Colorado's economic growth and commercial development. But what had made the business particularly successful had been my continued involvement in financial oversight, contract negotiations, and strategic planning that had protected against the kind of cost overruns, scheduling delays, and quality problems that often plagued development companies without experienced leadership and adequate financial resources. My banking background had enabled me to anticipate potential problems and implement systems that ensured projects remained profitable while meeting quality standards that satisfied tenants and investors. The company's reputation for delivering high-quality projects on time and within budget had attracted attention from major national developers and investment firms interested in partnering with local companies that understood Colorado's unique market dynamics and regulatory environment. These partnership opportunities had promised to expand Derek's business far beyond what would have been possible without the foundation of credibility and financial strength that my involvement had provided. My personal financial investment in Derek's success had extended beyond the business partnerships to include co-signing personal loans for his family's home, vehicles, and children's educational expenses, creating a comprehensive support system that had enabled him to focus entirely on business development without worrying about personal financial pressures. The total value of loans, credit lines, and personal guarantees that bore my signature had exceeded $3.2 million, representing the majority of my accumulated wealth and financial security. But perhaps most importantly, my involvement had included teaching Derek the sophisticated financial analysis and business judgment that successful commercial development required, sharing 40 years of professional experience in evaluating market trends, assessing project risks, and structuring deals that created value for all participants. The knowledge transfer had been extensive and ongoing, covering everything from basic accounting principles to complex financing strategies and market analysis techniques. The relationship that had developed between Derek and me had seemed to represent the ideal combination of family support and business mentorship, creating opportunities for intergenerational wealth building while maintaining close family relationships and ensuring that my professional expertise would benefit future generations. Our regular business meetings had been supplemented by family dinners where we'd discussed market trends, development opportunities, and long-term strategic planning for both the business and our family's financial security. But what I hadn't fully understood was that Derek and Rachel had begun to view my continued involvement in business decisions and family activities not as valuable partnership and grandmother relationship, but as evidence that I was becoming overly dependent on them for social interaction and purpose, leading them to gradually exclude me from business functions and family events, where my presence might create awkward situations or remind their friends that Derek's success depended heavily on his mother's financial backing. The first signs of this attitude shift had been subtle and easy to rationalize as natural evolution in our family dynamics as Derek's business had grown and his confidence had increased. Business meetings had become less frequent and more focused on reporting decisions that had already been made, rather than collaborative planning sessions where my expertise and judgment were actively sought and valued. Family gatherings had similarly evolved from regular weekly dinners with extended conversation about business developments and family news to brief monthly visits focused primarily on the grandchildren, with limited discussion of business matters and increasing emphasis on my health and living situation, rather than my continued professional activities and business involvement. The changes had been gradual enough that I'd initially attributed them to Derek's increasing business responsibilities and Rachel's growing involvement in community activities and volunteer work that required more of their time and attention. The reduced frequency of our interactions had seemed like a natural consequence of their success and busy schedules, rather than deliberate exclusion or changing attitudes toward my role in family and business relationships. But during the summer of 2023, I'd begun to notice more concerning patterns in their behavior and communication that had suggested fundamental changes in how they viewed our relationship and my continued involvement in their lives. These changes had initially seemed minor and had been easy to dismiss as temporary stress related to Derek's expanding business responsibilities and Rachel's increasing community commitments. The most troubling indication that something fundamental had shifted had occurred during a family barbecue in July 2023, when Derek had made several comments about my transportation needs and living situation that had surprised me with their presumptuous tone and their implication that my independence and autonomy were becoming problematic, rather than simply requiring occasional family support and consideration. "Mom, we've been thinking that driving at night might be getting difficult for you," Derek had said during our outdoor dinner, introducing concerns that he'd never previously expressed, despite my continued excellent driving record and comfortable navigation of Denver's street system. "Maybe we should start coordinating your evening activities so Rachel or I can provide transportation when you need to be out after dark." The suggestion itself hadn't been unreasonable, but Derek's presentation had implied that decisions about my transportation and evening activities were open for family discussion, rather than ultimately my choice as a competent adult who had been successfully managing personal logistics for 70 years. His tone had suggested that he viewed himself as having responsibility for managing my daily activities, rather than simply offering assistance when needed or requested. "We're also concerned about you living alone in such a large house," Rachel had added, reinforcing the impression that they considered themselves to be decision-makers, rather than supportive family members offering suggestions for my consideration. "The maintenance requirements must be overwhelming, and we worry about your safety and comfort in such a big space. My downtown penthouse apartment, a spectacular 2,800 square foot space on the 28th floor of Denver's premier luxury residential building, had been purchased 3 years earlier as my retirement home, featuring panoramic views of the Rocky Mountains and downtown skyline, state-of-the-art security systems, and comprehensive concierge services that eliminated most maintenance concerns, while providing the kind of urban amenities and cultural access that I'd always wanted for my retirement years. The suggestion that I couldn't manage my living situation had been both insulting and factually incorrect, since the apartment had been specifically selected to provide maintenance-free luxury living with professional management services that handled everything from housekeeping to building maintenance while ensuring security and convenience that would support my independence and comfort for decades to come. But Derek had continued with what had appeared to be prepared arguments about the challenges of aging in place and the benefits of transitioning to more supportive living arrangements before problems developed, suggesting that he and Rachel had been discussing my living situation extensively without involving me in their planning or seeking my input about my own preferences and needs. Mom, we've been researching some really excellent senior living communities that would provide you with maintenance-free living, social activities, and on-site healthcare support, Derek had said, producing brochures that he'd apparently collected in advance of the conversation. Some of these places are really luxurious and would allow you to enjoy your retirement without worrying about managing such a complex living situation. The assumption that I should consider moving to a senior living facility had been shocking, both for its presumption and for its complete disregard for my repeatedly expressed satisfaction with my current living arrangements and my clear statements that I intended to remain in my downtown apartment for as long as my health and finances allowed, which my excellent physical condition and substantial financial resources suggested would be for many years to come. Standing in my spectacular apartment that October morning, surrounded by banking awards and business achievement recognitions that represented 4 decades of financial expertise, looking out at the Denver skyline that included buildings financed through deals I'd structured and partnerships I'd negotiated, I had no idea that the family members I'd been supporting and mentoring for years were about to reveal the true extent of their ingratitude during a confrontation that would change everything forever and demonstrate exactly what happened when. People assumed they could treat someone with my financial leverage and industry connections as a disposable inconvenience. Sometimes the people who think you're just an aging burden, whose needs should be minimized for their convenience, are about to discover you're actually someone with the banking expertise and financial leverage necessary to restructure their entire business empire, while teaching them the most comprehensive lesson about family loyalty and respect they'll ever receive. Derek and Rachel were about to learn that abandoning someone on a dark highway was the beginning of the most sophisticated financial response they'd ever encountered, and the most costly mistake they'd ever make in their personal, professional, and financial lives. Standing in my penthouse apartment that October morning, reviewing the family photographs and professional achievement awards that lined my mahogany bookshelves, I couldn't help but reflect on how drastically different Derek's attitude toward my banking expertise had been just 15 years earlier, when he'd been a struggling college student desperate for the kind of financial guidance and industry mentorship that only someone with my experience and reputation in Colorado's banking community could provide. It was a relationship that had been built on genuine respect for my capabilities and sincere gratitude for the sacrifices I'd made to ensure his success. A time when Derek had spoken with such enthusiasm about learning from my expertise and building a business career that would honor the professional standards and innovative approaches that had defined my 4 decades in commercial banking. But to understand how I'd reached this point of casual dismissal from family members who should have been celebrating my continued success and professional acumen rather than treating my financial judgment as evidence of declining mental capacity, you need to know about the life of banking innovation and commercial lending mastery I'd built before Derek and Rachel decided my expertise was something outdated rather than invaluable. A life of groundbreaking financial work, industry leadership, and the kind of strategic thinking that had made their systematic underestimation both possible and ultimately catastrophic for their own interests. My journey to that frustrating October morning had begun 70 years earlier, when I'd been born, Dorothy Elizabeth Rodriguez, to parents who understood that a woman's education and professional competence were not optional luxuries, but essential foundations for survival and dignity in a world that rarely offered women second chances or easy paths to financial recognition and independence, particularly in the male-dominated field of commercial banking that would become my specialty and passion. My father, Miguel Rodriguez, had been a maintenance supervisor at Coors Brewing Company in Golden, Colorado, working double shifts during most of my childhood to provide the kind of economic stability and educational opportunities that would allow his children to achieve the professional success and financial security that his limited English and 8th grade education had made impossible for his own generation. He'd spent 32 years climbing ladders and repairing machinery while dreaming that his daughter would someday work in offices instead of factories, using her mind instead of her hands to build wealth and respect in American society. Mija, my father had said during one of our regular Sunday evening conversations about my future plans when I'd been a sophomore at Jefferson High School. The most important thing you can learn is that money talks louder than anything else in this country. If you understand how banks work, how loans work, how business people make decisions about money, you'll never have to depend on anyone else for your security or your dignity. But you have to be smarter and work harder than everyone around you, because they'll always be looking for reasons to say you don't belong. My mother, Carmen Rodriguez, had been equally influential in shaping my understanding of what was possible for an educated woman willing to work harder and think more strategically than the people around her. She'd worked as a seamstress in Denver's garment district during my early childhood, later becoming a supervisor at a textile factory while also managing our household with the kind of meticulous attention to detail and analytical thinking that had kept our family's finances both stable and growing, despite the economic uncertainties and discrimination that had characterized the experience of Mexican-American families in Colorado during the 1950s and 1960s. Hija, my mother had told me during my high school years, while helping me with algebra homework at our kitchen table, never let anyone convince you that understanding numbers and business is somehow too complicated or inappropriate for women, especially women like us. The women I know who have the most security and independence are those who understand how money works, can read contracts and financial documents, and refuse to depend on men or anyone else for their economic survival or professional advancement. The Cao Rodriguez household had been financially modest, but intellectually stimulating and academically rigorous in ways that had prepared me for the banking career I would eventually build. Dinner conversations had regularly included discussions of economic principles, business news from my father's workplace, financial planning strategies, and the importance of building professional expertise that could function reliably under pressure while also contributing to the economic advancement of our family and community. Our small house in Denver's West Side neighborhood had been filled with newspapers, library books about business and finance, and the kind of analytical thinking that had made complex financial problems seem solvable rather than overwhelming. By age 14, I'd already been helping my parents with basic financial planning and had developed sophisticated understanding of banking services, loan applications, and the relationship between financial knowledge and economic opportunity that would characterize my entire approach to commercial banking practice. My academic journey had begun at Jefferson High School in Denver, a public school known for its rigorous college preparatory programs and its emphasis on developing students' analytical thinking, precise communication, and the kind of intellectual discipline that would serve them well in competitive professional environments throughout their careers. The school's student body had been economically and ethnically diverse, including children of working-class families, recent immigrants, and established middle-class professionals who understood that academic excellence was the primary path to professional recognition and financial advancement in Colorado's growing business community. At Jefferson High, I'd excelled in mathematics, business studies, economics, and English, while also developing the organizational skills and attention to detail that would characterize my entire approach to professional responsibilities. The school's business education program had included coursework in accounting, business law, and economics that had provided foundation knowledge for understanding commercial transactions and financial analysis that would become central to my banking specialization. Miss Rodriguez, my senior economics teacher, Mr. Robert Patterson, had written in a recommendation letter that I'd found years later in my mother's papers, demonstrates the rare combination of analytical intelligence and practical business sense that characterizes natural bankers and financial professionals. She has the mathematical skills to understand complex financial relationships and the communication ability to explain these concepts clearly to clients and colleagues from diverse backgrounds. My senior thesis project at Jefferson High had focused on the economic impact of small business lending on minority communities in Denver, research that had required me to interview local business owners, analyze lending statistics from multiple banks, and develop original arguments about how financial institutions could better serve working-class communities while maintaining profitable operations and sound risk management practices. The University of Colorado at Denver had been the obvious next step, offering one of the most respected business programs in the Rocky Mountain region and a curriculum that combined rigorous analytical training with practical experience in banking, finance, and business management that would prepare graduates for leadership roles in Colorado's growing financial services industry. The proximity to downtown Denver had also provided opportunities for part-time employment in banks and financial institutions that would give me hands-on experience in every aspect of banking operations. During my 4 years at UC Denver, I'd maintained a 3.9 GPA while also working part-time as a bank teller at Colorado National Bank and completing internships with regional financial institutions that had provided practical experience in commercial lending, consumer banking, and financial analysis. That would be essential for successful banking practice in Colorado's competitive financial services market. The business program at UC Denver had been particularly demanding during the 1970s, requiring students to develop expertise in accounting, finance, economics, business law, and management, while also completing advanced coursework in specialized areas and demonstrating competence in financial analysis, client relations, and problem-solving that would be essential for successful banking careers in an industry that was experiencing rapid technological and regulatory changes. Dorothy has demonstrated exceptional ability in both the theoretical and practical aspects of banking education, my commercial banking professor, Dr. James Morrison, had written during my senior year. Her coursework consistently demonstrates sophisticated understanding of complex financial principles, while also exhibiting the kind of strategic thinking and attention to detail that characterizes truly effective banking professionals. My college thesis had examined innovative approaches to small business lending in the Rocky Mountain region, focusing on how traditional commercial loan structures could be modified to better serve the needs of minority-owned businesses and family enterprises while protecting lenders' interests and promoting responsible economic development that enhanced community stability and regional prosperity. The research had required extensive analysis of lending practices, regulatory frameworks, and case studies, while also developing original proposals that demonstrated practical applications of financial theory to contemporary business challenges. The thesis had been selected for publication in the Colorado Business Review and had received recognition from the Colorado Bankers Association as an outstanding example of how young banking professionals could contribute to solving contemporary financial and social challenges while building expertise in specialized practice areas that would serve both individual clients and broader community interests. After graduating summa cum laude from UC Denver in 1975, I'd spent my first 2 years in banking working for Colorado National Bank as a management trainee, rotating through every department to gain comprehensive understanding of banking operations, from teller services and customer relations to commercial lending and investment management. The training program had been excellent preparation for understanding the business and regulatory aspects of banking practice, and had given me experience in the kind of complex problem-solving that would become central to my career specialization in commercial real estate lending. The position at Colorado National had included everything from processing routine consumer loans to assisting with major commercial credit decisions, municipal bond issues for infrastructure development, and complex financial analysis involving business acquisitions, real estate transactions, and the intricate relationships between borrowers, investors, and regulatory agencies that governed Colorado's rapidly growing financial services industry. Dorothy, you have a natural talent for understanding how business deals actually work. My supervising manager at Colorado National, Patricia Williams, had observed after I'd successfully analyzed a complex commercial loan application that had involved multiple properties, business partnerships, and regulatory requirements. You don't just understand financial principles, you understand market forces and business relationships, and how to structure deals that work for everyone involved while protecting the bank's interests and serving legitimate business needs. One of my most challenging and educational projects during this period had been assisting with the financial analysis for a major downtown Denver redevelopment project that had involved coordinating loans from multiple banks, managing environmental and zoning compliance issues, and working with city planning departments to ensure that financing arrangements supported both private development goals and public policy objectives for urban renewal and economic development. The downtown redevelopment project had been particularly valuable for teaching me about the complex intersection of commercial real estate financing, municipal policy, community development, and the sophisticated financial analysis required for large-scale projects that involved multiple stakeholders with different priorities and risk tolerances. The project had also introduced me to many of the developers, contractors, and city officials who would become important professional relationships throughout my banking career. Ms. Rodriguez has demonstrated exceptional ability in developing creative financial solutions for complex community development challenges, the development team had written in a letter of appreciation that had become an important credential for my advancing banking career. Her understanding of both regulatory requirements and business needs made it possible for us to achieve our development goals while serving broader public interests. Her financial analysis saved time and money while delivering results that exceeded our expectations. The community development project had been particularly meaningful because it had demonstrated how sophisticated financial analysis could transform challenging situations into opportunities for economic growth and community improvement, while also showing me the enormous satisfaction that came from using banking expertise to solve problems that others had viewed as too complex or risky for traditional financial approaches. It was during my time at Colorado National that I'd first begun to understand the enormous gap between what most business owners expected from banking services and what was actually possible when sophisticated financial principles were applied to the challenges of business expansion, real estate development, and economic growth in ways that created value for borrowers, lenders, and communities while building long-term relationships based on mutual success and shared prosperity. This insight had led directly to my decision in 1977 to join First National Bank of Denver as a commercial lending officer, specializing in the kind of innovative business financing that could transform how entrepreneurs and developers thought about capital access, risk management, and the relationship between banking expertise and business success in Colorado's rapidly expanding economy. The decision to focus on commercial lending at First National had been motivated by my desire to work exclusively with the kind of complex business financing that had become my specialty, helping entrepreneurs and established businesses obtain the capital necessary for growth while providing the financial expertise and strategic guidance that could make the difference between business success and failure in Colorado's competitive and rapidly changing commercial marketplace. First National Bank of Denver had been Colorado's premier commercial banking institution, with a reputation for innovative financing solutions and sophisticated understanding of regional business conditions that had made it the preferred lender for many of the state's most successful developers, manufacturers, and service companies. The bank's commercial lending department had handled transactions ranging from small business expansion loans to major industrial development projects worth hundreds of millions of dollars. My first major success at First National had been structuring the financing for a family-owned construction company that had been struggling to obtain working capital for a major highway construction contract. The deal had required 6 months of complex financial analysis and creative structuring, but my banking expertise and understanding of construction industry dynamics had ultimately resulted in a lending arrangement that had enabled the company to complete the project profitably, while establishing a long-term banking relationship that had supported their growth into one of Colorado's largest construction firms. Dorothy Martinez has saved our company through banking expertise that went far beyond what we thought was possible. The construction company owner had written in a testimonial that had become essential marketing material for my developing reputation in commercial lending. Her understanding of our industry and creative approach to financing enabled us to win contracts that other banks said were too risky to support. Her professional guidance changed our business trajectory completely. Over the following decade, I had built a reputation as Colorado's premier specialist in construction and real estate development financing, handling complex transactions for clients ranging from individual property developers to major commercial builders, with a consistent focus on creative financial solutions that supported business growth while maintaining sound risk management and profitable outcomes for the bank. My approach had consistently emphasized the importance of understanding clients' actual business models and developing financial strategies that served both their immediate capital needs and their long-term growth objectives, creating banking relationships that enhanced clients' business success, rather than simply providing short-term financing solutions that addressed immediate cash flow requirements without supporting sustainable business development. One of my most challenging and rewarding cases during this period had been structuring the financing for a Hispanic-owned real estate development company that had been seeking capital to develop affordable housing in Denver's rapidly gentrifying neighborhoods. The project had required extensive coordination with federal housing agencies, city planning departments, and community organizations. But my banking expertise and understanding of community development financing had ultimately resulted in a successful development that had provided quality housing while generating profits and establishing important precedents for minority business participation in large-scale real estate development. Dorothy Martinez has accomplished financing results that we were told were impossible, the development company principals had written in a testimonial that I'd treasured throughout my career. Her understanding of community development financing, regulatory requirements, and business planning enabled us to complete projects that had been stalled for years. Her banking expertise has transformed our company's capabilities and community impact. By the mid-1980s, I had become one of Colorado's most respected commercial lending professionals, with a client base that included some of the region's most successful developers, construction companies, and business leaders, as well as emerging entrepreneurs who needed sophisticated financial guidance for launching and expanding innovative businesses in Colorado's diversifying economy. The recognition that had meant the most to me during this period had come in 1987, when the Colorado Bankers Association had presented me with their Outstanding Achievement in Commercial Lending Award, acknowledging not just individual transactions, but my overall contribution to advancing banking practices and client service standards throughout the Rocky Mountain region. Dorothy Martinez has spent over a decade proving that commercial banking can serve both individual business needs and broader community development through financial excellence that supports business growth while maintaining sound banking practices, the award citation had read. Her work has enhanced Colorado's banking landscape while establishing standards for client service and financial innovation that have influenced banking professionals throughout the region. The 1990s had brought new challenges and opportunities, as Colorado's economy had experienced dramatic growth and increasing complexity that had required even more sophisticated banking expertise and market knowledge to navigate successfully. My practice had evolved to handle larger and more complex transactions, while maintaining the client-centered approach that had built my reputation and professional relationships. During this period, I'd handled some of the most significant commercial real estate transactions in Colorado's history, including the financing for Denver International Airport's commercial development, the creation of innovative financing structures for technology company expansion, and complex transactions involving environmental regulations and business development rights that had established important precedents for balancing economic growth with environmental protection and community development. The most personally satisfying case of my career had occurred in 1995, when I'd structured financing for a consortium of minority-owned businesses that had been seeking capital to develop a major commercial complex in Denver's Five Points neighborhood. The project had required 2 years of complex negotiations and innovative financing arrangements, but the results had included significant economic development, job creation, and community revitalization that had protected an important cultural district while providing opportunities for business growth and wealth building. Dorothy Martinez has created economic opportunities for our community that seemed impossible before her involvement, the business consortium had written in a letter that had been published in the Denver Post. Her banking expertise and commitment to community development saved our neighborhood while building businesses that provide jobs and services for families who had been ignored by other financial institutions. Her professional guidance proved that banking can be a force for positive social change. By 2000, when I'd been in banking for over 20 years, I had become synonymous with excellence in commercial lending throughout the Rocky Mountain region. With a track record of successful transactions that had supported billions of dollars in economic development while establishing banking practices that had influenced commercial lending standards throughout Colorado and neighboring states. The new millennium had brought opportunities to expand my expertise into new areas of specialization, including international trade financing and technology company funding that had become increasingly important as Colorado's economy had diversified beyond traditional industries like agriculture, mining, and energy into telecommunications, biotechnology, and information services that required sophisticated financial expertise and global market understanding. The most significant achievement of my later career had been the development of innovative small business lending programs that had combined traditional commercial banking expertise with community development principles to help minority-owned and women-owned businesses obtain capital and financial guidance that had previously been available only to larger, more established companies with extensive credit histories and substantial collateral assets. Dorothy Martinez has revolutionized how we think about small business lending for underserved communities. Robert Chen, president of the Colorado Small Business Development Association, had noted in a professional journal article about my innovative approaches. Her understanding of commercial banking enables her to develop lending programs that serve community development goals while maintaining sound banking practices and profitable outcomes for financial institutions. The recognition that had meant the most to me had come in 2005 when the American Bankers Association had presented me with their Lifetime Achievement Award in commercial banking, recognizing not just individual achievements, but my overall contribution to advancing the practice of commercial banking and supporting business development throughout a career that had spanned over 3 decades. Dorothy Martinez has spent 30 years proving that banking excellence and community service can coexist with innovation and profitable business practices, the award citation had read. Her career has enhanced the banking profession while demonstrating that commercial lending can serve both individual business needs and broader economic development through expertise, integrity, and commitment to client success. By the time I'd been promoted to Senior Vice President of Commercial Banking in 2008. My department had handled over 2,000 commercial loans representing more than $3.8 billion in business financing, had established important precedents for community development lending that had influenced banking practices throughout the western United States, and had built a reputation for financial excellence that had attracted clients from throughout the Rocky Mountain region and beyond. But standing in my penthouse apartment that October morning, surrounded by the awards, client testimonials, and professional relationships that represented 4 decades of banking achievement, I had no understanding that the family members I'd been supporting and mentoring for years were about to dismiss my expertise as outdated thinking. revealing the true scope of their ingratitude and setting in motion events that would demonstrate exactly what happened when people underestimated someone with my financial leverage and determination to protect what I'd worked my entire life to build. The banking expertise, professional relationships, industry recognition, and strategic thinking that Derek and Rachel were dismissing as irrelevant to contemporary business management were actually going to become the foundation for teaching them the most comprehensive lesson they'd ever receive about respecting experience, honoring family loyalty, and understanding that some people respond to abandonment with financial strategies that reshape everyone's understanding of what's possible when knowledge meets determination and unlimited access to commercial banking resources. Sometimes the people who think your career is just ancient history are about to discover you're actually someone with the banking knowledge and financial leverage necessary to restructure their entire business empire, while teaching them that dismissing someone's professional legacy was the beginning of the most sophisticated financial response they'd ever encountered, and the most expensive mistake they'd ever make in their personal and business lives. Standing in that apartment, surrounded by decades of banking expertise and unlimited access to the financial resources necessary to protect my interests, I had no idea that Derek and Rachel were about to reveal their true intentions during a family confrontation that would demonstrate exactly why underestimating a commercial banking executive with my experience and determination was about to become the most costly error in judgment they'd ever make. Standing in my penthouse apartment that October morning, reviewing the family photographs that documented years of what I'd believed was genuine collaboration and mutual respect, I couldn't help but remember how different Derek and Rachel's attitude toward my judgment and financial contributions had been just 5 years earlier, when they'd regularly sought my banking advice and had expressed sincere gratitude for the opportunities and security that my professional success had provided for our entire family. The transformation from grateful partnership to presumptuous entitlement had been so gradual that I'd initially failed to recognize the systematic nature of their changing expectations and their evolving view of my role in their lives and business success. The generous foundation that had made Derek's entrepreneurial success possible had begun in 2018, when he'd approached me with his carefully developed business plan for starting a commercial real estate development company in Denver's rapidly expanding market. At 34 years old, Derek had been working as a project manager for a large construction firm, gaining valuable experience in commercial development processes, while also becoming increasingly frustrated with his limited authority and modest salary that had made it difficult for him to support his growing family in the lifestyle that Rachel's social aspirations and the children's educational needs seemed to require. "Mom, I've been thinking about starting my own development company," Derek had said during a family dinner in March 2018, presenting a comprehensive business plan that had demonstrated months of research and strategic thinking. "The Denver market has so much potential right now, and I've learned enough about the development process to know that I could be successful if I had access to the right financing and business connections." Derek's business plan had been impressive in its thoroughness and realistic in its assessment of market opportunities and potential challenges. He'd identified specific neighborhoods where development opportunities existed, researched construction costs and financing requirements, and developed detailed financial projections that had suggested strong profit potential for well-executed projects in carefully selected locations. His presentation had demonstrated genuine understanding of commercial real estate dynamics and suggested that my years of informal business education and career mentoring had provided him with valuable foundation knowledge for entrepreneurial success. "I know that starting a development company requires significant capital and industry connections that I don't have yet," Derek had continued, acknowledging the practical challenges that had prevented most would-be developers from successfully launching independent businesses. "But with your banking expertise and professional relationships, I think we could create a partnership that would benefit both of us while building something valuable for Sophia and Miguel's future." The proposal for our business partnership had been presented as a mutually beneficial arrangement that would leverage my banking expertise and industry connections to support Derek's entrepreneurial ambitions while creating additional income. streams for my retirement, and ensuring that my professional knowledge would continue generating value for our family's long-term financial security. The combination of my established creditworthiness and Derek's development skills had seemed like an ideal foundation for business success that would strengthen family relationships while building wealth for future generations. My decision to support Derek's business venture had been motivated by several practical and emotional considerations that had made the partnership seem both financially sound and personally satisfying. I'd wanted to help Derek achieve the kind of professional independence and financial success that would provide security for his family, while also utilizing my banking expertise and industry relationships in ways that would continue generating income and professional satisfaction during my transition toward eventual retirement from full-time banking work. The commercial real estate market in Denver during 2018 had been experiencing strong growth, driven by population migration, technology company expansion, and urban redevelopment initiatives that had created numerous opportunities for experienced developers who understood local market dynamics and had access to appropriate financing resources. My banking relationships and industry knowledge had positioned me perfectly to help Derek navigate the complex process of establishing a development company and securing the capital necessary for his first commercial projects. Dorothy, this partnership could be excellent for both of you. My longtime colleague and commercial lending specialist, Patricia Chen, had observed when I'd consulted with her about Derek's business proposal. Your banking expertise and credit profile would provide the financial foundation that most new developers lack, while Derek's project management experience and energy could handle the day-to-day development work that requires younger legs and more time than you might want to invest directly. The financial structure we'd developed for our business partnership had been carefully designed to protect my interests while providing Derek with the capital and credit access necessary for successful commercial development. I had agreed to co-sign construction loans and provide personal guarantees for business credit lines, while Derek would manage daily operations and handle the physical aspects of project development that required constant supervision and coordination with contractors, architects, and municipal agencies. Our first joint project had been a modest mixed-use development in Denver's Baker neighborhood, featuring ground-floor retail space with residential lofts above, designed to serve the area's growing population of young professionals and creative workers who were seeking affordable housing options in neighborhoods with character and convenient access to downtown employment centers. The $2.8 million construction loan had been secured using my creditworthiness and banking relationships, with Derek managing project development while I provided financial oversight and business guidance based on my decades of experience with similar commercial lending arrangements. The Baker Neighborhood project had represented everything I'd hoped our partnership could achieve. Derek had demonstrated genuine competence in managing construction timelines, contractor relationships, and quality control, while I had been able to utilize my banking expertise to structure favorable financing arrangements and ensure that the project remained profitable throughout the development process. The collaboration had felt like genuine partnership where both of our strengths had been valued and utilized effectively. Mom, I can't believe how much easier this process is with your banking connections, Derek had said during one of our regular project review meetings, expressing the kind of appreciation and respect for my expertise that had made our partnership feel both personally satisfying and professionally rewarding. The contractors take me more seriously when they know that our financing is solid, and having your guidance on the business side makes me feel confident that we're making smart decisions. The Baker project had been completed 6 months ahead of schedule and $200,000 under budget, generating profits that had exceeded our initial projections while establishing Derek's reputation within Denver's development community as a reliable and competent project manager. The success had validated my decision to support his business ambitions, while demonstrating that our family partnership could achieve both financial objectives and personal satisfaction for everyone involved. The early success had led to increasingly ambitious projects, each one building on the reputation and relationships that our collaboration had established within Denver's commercial real estate community. Our second project had been a $5.3 million office complex in Denver's tech center, designed to provide modern workspace for the technology companies that were rapidly expanding their Colorado operations and seeking professional office environments that could attract and retain skilled employees. The tech center project had required more sophisticated financing arrangements and more complex coordination with multiple contractors and specialists, but Derek had risen to these challenges while continuing to appreciate and actively seek my business guidance and financial expertise. Our working relationship had developed into genuine collaboration, where my banking knowledge and his operational skills had complemented each other effectively while maintaining the mutual respect and family warmth that had made our partnership personally meaningful as well as financially successful. "I'm learning so much from working with you," Derek had told me during a family celebration dinner after the tech center project had been successfully completed and leased to capacity within 3 months of completion. "Your understanding of how financing really works and your ability to structure deals that protect our interests while keeping everyone happy is something I never could have learned from books or other developers. This partnership is the best business education I could ever get." Our third major project had been an $8.7 million retail and restaurant development in Boulder, featuring a combination of national chain stores and local restaurants designed to serve both the university community and Boulder's growing population of affluent professionals who were seeking convenient access to dining and shopping options in walkable neighborhood environments. The Boulder project had been our most complex undertaking, requiring coordination with city planning departments, environmental compliance agencies, and multiple financing sources that had tested both Derek's project management abilities and my financial structuring expertise. "This Boulder project is teaching me things about development that I never would have understood without your involvement," Derek had said during one of our weekly business review meetings. "The way you've structured the financing to minimize our exposure while still giving us maximum profit potential is incredible. I'm starting to understand why you're so respected in the banking community." The Boulder development had been completed on schedule and within budget, generating substantial profits while establishing our company's reputation for delivering high-quality projects that satisfied both tenants and municipal planning requirements. The success had attracted attention from other developers and investors who had begun inquiring about potential partnerships and joint ventures that could expand our business beyond what either Derek or I could have achieved independently. By 2020, Martinez and Associates Development had completed 5 major projects worth a total of $32 million, establishing Derek as one of Colorado's most promising young developers, while generating substantial profits that had enhanced my retirement security and created a business platform for even more ambitious future projects. The company had developed a reputation for completing projects on time and within budget, while maintaining high-quality standards that had resulted in rapid leasing and strong investor returns. But what had made our partnership particularly successful during these early years had been Derek's continued appreciation for my banking expertise and his genuine interest in learning the sophisticated financial analysis and business judgment that successful commercial development required. Our regular business meetings had been supplemented by informal mentoring sessions, where I'd shared 40 years of professional experience in evaluating market trends, assessing project risks, and structuring deals that created value for all participants while protecting against the kind of cost overruns and quality problems that often plague development companies without experienced financial guidance. "Mom, I hope you know how grateful I am for everything you've taught me about the business side of development," Derek had said during a family Thanksgiving gathering in 2020. "I watch other developers struggling with financing problems and contractor issues that we never have to worry about because of your expertise and your banking relationships. I feel like I'm getting a master's degree in real estate finance just from working with you." Derek's expressed gratitude and continued respect for my contributions had made our business partnership feel like the ideal combination of family support and professional collaboration, creating opportunities for wealth building while maintaining close family relationships, and ensuring that my banking expertise would continue benefiting future generations of our family. The financial success had been accompanied by personal satisfaction that had made this phase of my life feel both productive and meaningful. The business success had also enabled Derek and Rachel to achieve the kind of lifestyle and social status that had become increasingly important to them as their personal wealth had grown and their social circle had expanded to include other successful young professionals and entrepreneurs throughout Denver's affluent suburban communities. Their $425,000 home in Highlands Ranch had been purchased using financing that I had co-signed, while their children attended private schools whose tuition I had helped support through business profits and family financial assistance. "Dorothy, we're so thankful for all the opportunities you've created for our family," Rachel had said during a Mother's Day dinner in 2021, expressing appreciation that had seemed genuine and had reinforced my feeling that our family's financial success was creating stronger relationships and shared prosperity that would benefit everyone for decades to come. Derek's business success has given us security and opportunities that we never could have achieved without your support and expertise. My personal financial investment in Derek's success had extended beyond the business partnerships to include co-signing personal loans for the family's home improvements, vehicle purchases, and the children's educational expenses, creating a comprehensive support system that had enabled Derek to focus entirely on business development without worrying about personal financial pressures or credit limitations that might have restricted his ability to take advantage of development opportunities or maintain the professional image that commercial real estate success required. The total value of loans, credit lines, and personal guarantees that bore my signature had grown to over $2.1 million by 2021, representing a significant portion of my accumulated wealth, but also reflecting the business success and family prosperity that our partnership had generated. The financial commitments had felt like sound investments in both Derek's future and our family's long-term financial security, particularly given the steady profits and appreciating asset values that our development projects had been generating. But, perhaps most importantly, my involvement had included extensive knowledge transfer that had been preparing Derek to eventually manage the business independently, while maintaining the high standards and sophisticated financial management that had made our partnership successful. The education had covered everything from basic project accounting to complex financing strategies, market analysis techniques, and the relationship management skills that were essential for maintaining the banking and contractor relationships that supported our development activities. I feel like I'm finally starting to understand the big picture of how development financing really works, Derek had said during one of our quarterly business planning sessions in late 2021. Your explanations about cash flow management and risk assessment are helping me see patterns and opportunities that I never would have recognized when I was just managing projects for other developers. The family relationship that had developed alongside our business partnership had seemed to represent everything I'd hoped for in terms of intergenerational collaboration and mutual support. Derek and Rachel had been including me regularly in family activities and social events. The grandchildren had been spending substantial time at my apartment and had been developing close relationships with me, and our business meetings had been supplemented by regular family dinners where we'd discussed market trends, development opportunities, and long-term planning for both the business and our family's financial security. The downtown Denver penthouse apartment that had become my retirement home had been purchased in 2019 using profits from our early development projects, representing both a personal achievement and a symbol of the business success that our partnership had generated. The spectacular 2,800 square foot space on the 28th floor had provided panoramic views of the Rocky Mountains and downtown skyline, along with the kind of luxury amenities and urban conveniences that had made my retirement years both comfortable and socially active. "Mom, this apartment is incredible," Derek had said during the housewarming party we'd held to celebrate my new home. "It's such a perfect reflection of everything you've achieved in your career, and having you downtown makes it so easy for us to spend time together." and for the kids to visit their grandmother regularly. The apartment's location had been chosen specifically to provide convenient access to downtown business activities, cultural events, and the kind of urban lifestyle that I'd always wanted for my retirement years, while also being easily accessible for family visits and business meetings. The building's concierge services and comprehensive amenities had eliminated most maintenance concerns, while providing the security and convenience that had been important considerations for my long-term comfort and independence. The 2019 through 2021 period had represented the peak of our family harmony and business success, with Derek expressing regular gratitude for my contributions, Rachel including me meaningfully in family planning and social activities, and the grandchildren developing the kind of close relationships with me that had made our extended family feel both loving and financially secure. The business had been generating steady profits, our personal relationships had been warm and mutually supportive, and the future had seemed to promise continued success and family unity. But what I hadn't fully understood during this period of apparent harmony was that Derek and Rachel had been gradually developing different expectations about our partnership and my role in their lives that would eventually create fundamental conflicts about autonomy, respect, and the nature of family relationships. The changes had been subtle enough that I'd initially attributed them to natural evolution in our family dynamics, as Derek's confidence had grown and the business had become more established. The first subtle indication that something fundamental might be shifting had occurred during a family vacation in summer 2021, when Derek and Rachel had made several comments about my travel stamina and activity preferences that had seemed to suggest they were beginning to view my age and physical limitations as factors that needed to be managed, rather than simply accommodated within normal family planning processes. "Mom, maybe you should rest this afternoon instead of joining us for the hiking excursion," Rachel had suggested during our week-long vacation in Vail, using a tone that had seemed more directive than supportive. "The trail might be challenging for someone your age, and we want to make sure you're comfortable and safe." The suggestion itself hadn't been unreasonable, but Rachel's presentation had implied that decisions about my participation in family activities were becoming subject to their judgment about my capabilities rather than my own assessment of my interests and physical condition. The tone had suggested a subtle shift from treating me as an autonomous adult, making personal choices, to viewing me as someone whose activities needed to be supervised and limited for my own protection. "We're also thinking that some of the evening activities might be too much for you," Derek had added, reinforcing the impression that they were beginning to coordinate their management of my involvement in family events, rather than simply including me in planning discussions, where my preferences would be considered alongside everyone else's needs and interests. These early warning signs had been easy to rationalize as natural expressions of family concern and care, particularly since they'd been presented as consideration for my comfort and well-being, rather than explicit limitations on my autonomy or decision-making authority. But they had represented the beginning of a pattern that would gradually expand from occasional suggestions about specific activities to broader assumptions about my need for guidance and supervision in multiple areas of my life. Standing in my spectacular penthouse apartment that October morning, surrounded by family photographs that documented years of what I'd believed was genuine partnership and mutual respect, looking out at the Denver skyline that included buildings financed through deals I'd structured and business relationships I'd developed, I had no idea that the family members I'd been supporting and mentoring were about to reveal the true extent of their changed attitudes during a confrontation that would demonstrate exactly what happened when people assumed they could treat someone with my financial leverage and banking expertise as a burden to be managed rather than a partner to be respected. The generous foundation I'd provided for Derek's success, the comprehensive financial support I'd given to his family's lifestyle, and the extensive business knowledge I'd shared during our partnership were about to become the very tools I would use to teach them the most expensive lesson about family loyalty and respect they would ever receive. Sometimes the people who think your generosity makes you vulnerable are about to discover you're actually someone with the banking expertise and financial leverage necessary to restructure their entire world while demonstrating that some gifts come with expectations of ongoing respect and consideration that cannot be violated without permanent consequences. Standing in my penthouse apartment that October morning, reviewing the family photographs that had once represented genuine partnership and mutual respect, I couldn't help but recognize the systematic progression of disrespect that had characterized Derek and Rachel's behavior throughout 2022 and early 2023. As their initial gratitude for my financial support and business expertise had gradually evolved into presumptuous entitlement and barely concealed irritation with my continued involvement in decisions about my own assets and financial commitments. The escalation from subtle boundary testing to outright manipulation had been so methodical that I'd initially failed to recognize it as a coordinated campaign designed to gradually diminish my authority over my own financial affairs while creating justification for more direct intervention in my personal life and living arrangements. But looking back with the clarity that comes from understanding the full scope of their intentions, I could see that every suggestion, every expression of concern, and every attempt to limit my independence had been part of a systematic strategy to establish their control over the business empire that my banking expertise and creditworthiness had made possible. The first significant escalation in their disrespectful behavior had occurred during a business meeting in January 2022, when Derek had announced several major decisions about our development projects without consulting me or seeking my input. Despite the fact that my personal guarantees and banking relationships were securing the financing for every aspect of our business operations. "Mom, I've decided to move forward with the Stapleton project," Derek had announced during what I'd expected to be a planning discussion, presenting completed contracts and financing arrangements that he'd negotiated independently. "The construction bids came in lower than expected, and I want to get started before material costs increase further." The Stapleton development was a $14.2 million mixed-use project that would be our largest and most complex undertaking, requiring multiple construction loans, extensive municipal coordination, and sophisticated financial management that would test every aspect of our business capabilities. The decision to proceed with such a significant project was exactly the kind of strategic choice that should have involved extensive consultation and collaborative analysis, given both the financial risks involved and my 4 decades of experience in evaluating complex commercial development opportunities. "Derek, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but shouldn't we discuss the financing structure and timeline before making final commitments?" I'd responded, trying to maintain family harmony, while asserting my legitimate role in decisions that would significantly impact both our business and my personal financial exposure. "This project represents a major expansion of our activities, and I'd like to review the contracts and financial arrangements before we proceed." But Derek's reaction had revealed a fundamental shift in his attitude toward my involvement and expertise, suggesting that he'd begun to view my continued participation in business decisions as interference rather than valuable partnership in ventures that depended entirely on my creditworthiness and banking relationships. "Mom, I think you need to trust my judgment on operational decisions," Derek had said, using a tone that had been both dismissive and condescending. "I've been managing these projects for 4 years now, and I understand the construction and development side much better than you do. Your role is providing the banking relationships and financial oversight, but the day-to-day business decisions need to be mine." The implication that my banking expertise was relevant only for securing financing, rather than for providing strategic guidance based on decades of experience with commercial development risks and opportunities, had been both insulting and alarming. Derek's attitude had suggested that he viewed our partnership not as ongoing collaboration between equals, but as temporary assistance that should automatically transition to his complete control once he'd gained enough experience to operate independently. "I understand that you handle the operational aspects," I'd replied, "but these are major financial commitments that affect both of our interests. And I think we should make strategic decisions collaboratively, rather than having you simply announce what you've already decided. But Rachel had been prepared to support Derek's position with what had appeared to be carefully planned arguments about generational differences and the importance of allowing younger family members to assume leadership roles in family businesses, without excessive interference from older generations who might not understand contemporary market conditions and business practices. "Dorothy, we really appreciate everything you've done to help Derek build this business," Rachel had said, using the kind of patient tone typically reserved for elderly relatives whose judgment was considered impaired. "But I think it's important for Derek to have the authority to make operational decisions without having to explain every choice to family members who might not be familiar with current market conditions and construction practices." The suggestion that my 40 years of commercial banking experience had left me unfamiliar with current market conditions had been particularly offensive, given that my professional activities and industry relationships had kept me thoroughly informed about every aspect of Colorado's commercial real estate market, including construction costs, financing trends, and regulatory changes that directly affected development profitability and risk assessment. Over the following months, this pattern of announcing decisions rather than seeking consultation had expanded to include increasingly significant business choices that had directly affected my financial exposure and my reputation within Denver's banking community. Derek had begun negotiating contracts, securing permits, and making commitments to contractors without involving me in the decision-making process, despite the fact that my personal guarantees were securing the credit lines and construction loans that made every aspect of our business operations possible. The systematic exclusion from business decisions had been accompanied by increasingly presumptuous attitudes toward my personal life and living arrangements. As Derek and Rachel had begun making suggestions about my daily activities, social commitments, and lifestyle choices that had reflected their growing belief that my age and supposed isolation required their guidance and supervision. "Mom, we're concerned that you're spending too much time alone in that big apartment," Rachel had said during a family dinner in March 2022, introducing concerns that she'd never previously expressed despite years of visiting my home regularly. "We think it would be good for you to have more social interaction and structured activities that would keep you engaged with people your own age." The suggestion that I was socially isolated had been particularly absurd, given that my retirement lifestyle had included regular cultural activities, volunteer work with financial literacy organizations, continued involvement in banking industry events, and an active social life that had provided exactly the kind of intellectual stimulation and community engagement that I'd always wanted for my retirement years. But Derek had been prepared with what had appeared to be researched recommendations about senior activity programs and social groups that would provide appropriate social opportunities for someone in my situation, suggesting that he and Rachel had been discussing my social needs and developing plans for addressing what they perceived as problems with my current lifestyle choices. "There are some excellent senior centers and community programs that offer activities specifically designed for people in your situation," Derek had said, producing brochures that he'd apparently collected in advance of our conversation. "We think you'd really enjoy the social activities and educational programs they provide, and it would give you opportunities to spend time with people who share your interests and life experience." The assumption that I needed to be directed toward people my own age, rather than continuing to maintain the diverse personal and professional relationships that had always characterized my social life, had been both insulting and revealing about their changing perception of my capabilities and social value. Their suggestions had implied that my continued independence and autonomous social choices were inappropriate for someone my age, rather than evidence of successful aging and continued engagement with life. But the most troubling aspect of their increasing presumption had been their apparent coordination with outside professionals and service providers who had been consulted about my situation without my knowledge or consent, suggesting a level of planning and preparation that went far beyond casual family concern about my welfare and independence. We've also spoken with some elder care consultants about the best approaches for helping seniors maintain social connections and appropriate living arrangements, Rachel had added during one particularly memorable conversation, mentioning consulting, services that specialized in assisting families with elderly relatives who were resistant to necessary lifestyle changes. They've provided some excellent guidance about communication strategies and resource options that can make transitions much smoother for everyone involved. The revelation that they'd been consulting with elder care specialists about strategies for managing my resistance to their suggestions had been the first clear evidence that Derek and Rachel viewed me not as a competent adult making reasonable decisions about my own life, but as an elderly problem that required professional intervention and family coordination to resolve appropriately. The systematic nature of their campaign had become undeniable during the summer of 2023, when their suggestions about my living arrangements and business involvement had evolved from occasional expressions of concern into persistent pressure, accompanied by specific proposals and what had appeared to be carefully researched alternatives that they'd obviously been investigating without my participation or approval. "Mom, we've been thinking that managing such a large apartment might be getting difficult for you," Derek had announced during a family barbecue in July 2023, introducing concerns about my living situation that had never been mentioned during the 4 years I'd been successfully and happily residing in my downtown penthouse. "The maintenance responsibilities and security concerns must be overwhelming, and we worry about your safety and comfort in such an urban environment." The suggestion that I couldn't manage my living situation had been particularly insulting, given that my apartment was located in Denver's premier luxury residential building, featuring 24-hour concierge services, comprehensive security systems, professional maintenance staff, and the kind of urban amenities and cultural access that had made my retirement years both convenient and socially enriching. But Rachel had been prepared with specific alternatives and what had appeared to be detailed research about senior living, options that would better serve my needs while reducing the responsibilities and potential risks associated with independent living in such a complex urban environment. "We've toured several excellent senior communities that would be perfect for someone in your situation," Rachel had said, producing professional brochures and pricing information that she'd apparently been collecting for months. Sunrise Senior Living has a beautiful facility in Cherry Hills that would provide all the services you need, while also offering social activities and healthcare support that aren't available in your current living arrangement. The assumption that I should consider relocating to an institutional setting designed for people who required assistance with daily living activities had been shocking, both for its presumption and for its complete disregard for my repeatedly expressed satisfaction with my current lifestyle, and my clear statements that I intended to remain in my downtown apartment for as long as my health and finances allowed. But what had made their pressure even more concerning had been their apparent detailed knowledge of the costs and logistics associated with my current living situation, suggesting that they'd been analyzing my financial affairs and making calculations about how changes in my housing arrangements might affect my overall financial picture and their access to my assets. "The monthly costs for your apartment, when you include maintenance fees, property taxes, insurance, and utilities, must be enormous," Derek had added, demonstrating knowledge of my personal finances that I'd never shared with him and that he could only have obtained through systematic investigation of my banking records and financial statements. "A quality senior community would probably cost less than what you're spending now, while providing much better security and social support." The revelation that Derek had been analyzing my personal financial information without my knowledge or consent had been the first clear indication that their concern about my living situation was motivated by their own financial interests rather than genuine worry about my welfare or comfort. The breaking point had finally come on the evening of October 13th, 2023, during what had started as a routine family dinner at my apartment, but had quickly evolved into a coordinated intervention designed to force my compliance with their plans for relocating me to supervised housing while transferring complete control of our business operations and my personal assets to Derek and Rachel. "Mom, we need to have a serious conversation about your future," Derek had announced as soon as we'd finished eating, using a tone that had suggested this was a family crisis intervention rather than a discussion among equals. Rachel and I have been analyzing your situation extensively, and we've concluded that continuing to live independently in this apartment is no longer safe or practical for someone your age. The presumption that they had authority to analyze my situation and reach conclusions about my living arrangements had been shocking enough, but what had followed had been a systematic attack on my competence and autonomy that had revealed the true scope of their planning and their complete disrespect for my rights and preferences. We've consulted with geriatric specialists, financial advisors, and senior living consultants, Rachel had continued, producing a folder of documents that she'd apparently prepared for the meeting. Everyone agrees that seniors living alone in complex urban environments face significant risks that increase dramatically after age 70, and that family intervention is often necessary to prevent serious problems before they develop. The revelation that they'd been building a professional case against my competence and independence had been the clearest evidence yet that their concern was not about my welfare, but about establishing legal and practical justification for gaining control of my financial affairs and living arrangements regardless of my preferences or actual capabilities. We've identified an excellent assisted living facility that would be perfect for your needs, Derek had added, producing brochures and contracts that he'd apparently prepared in advance. Golden Years Assisted Living in Littleton has a beautiful apartment available next month, and they provide all the services you need, including meals, housekeeping, social activities, and on-site medical support. The assumption that I would simply accept their housing selection and abandon the home I'd carefully chosen for my retirement had been insulting enough, but their detailed knowledge of availability and pricing had suggested they'd been making inquiries and possibly even preliminary arrangements without my consent or knowledge. But the most shocking revelation had come when Derek had announced their timeline for implementing these changes and their expectations for my cooperation with plans that would fundamentally alter both my living situation and our business relationship. We think the transition should happen within the next month, Derek had said, as though my cooperation was a foregone conclusion. The apartment at Golden Years will be available November 15th, and we can coordinate the move to minimize disruption while giving us time to restructure the business operations for more efficient management. The casual announcement that they'd been planning to restructure our business operations had been the final confirmation that Derek and Rachel viewed our partnership not as ongoing collaboration between equals, but as temporary arrangement that should transition to their complete control once they'd gained sufficient experience and credibility to operate independently without my continued involvement or oversight. We've already spoken with Colorado Business Bank about transferring the business accounts and credit lines to Derek's individual control, Rachel had added, revealing that they'd been consulting with financial institutions about removing my authority over business operations that depended entirely on my creditworthiness and personal guarantees. They've indicated that the transfer process would be straightforward once you're settled in your new living arrangement. The revelation that they'd been planning to remove me from business operations while relocating me to supervised housing had been the clearest possible evidence that Derek and Rachel viewed me not as their business partner and family matriarch who deserved respect and autonomy, but as an obstacle to their complete control over assets and business relationships that my expertise and creditworthiness had created. My response had been immediate and unequivocal. I'd told them that I had no intention of leaving my apartment, that I was completely satisfied with my current living arrangements, that I was fully capable of managing my own affairs, and that their interference in my personal and financial decisions was both inappropriate and unwelcome. I appreciate your concern, I'd said, trying to maintain some semblance of family civility while making my position absolutely clear. But I'm not interested in moving to an assisted living facility. I don't need help managing my property or finances, and I expect you to respect my decision to continue living independently for as long as I choose to do so. But Derek's response had revealed that he and Rachel had been prepared for my resistance and had developed strategies for overcoming my opposition that went far beyond family persuasion and had entered the realm of coercion and manipulation. "Mom, we understand this is difficult for you to accept," Derek had said. using the kind of patient tone typically used with elderly relatives whose opposition was viewed as evidence of impaired judgment. But we have legal responsibilities as your family to ensure your safety and financial security, even if you don't agree with our assessment of the situation. The threat of legal action to override my decision-making authority had been the final confirmation that Derek and Rachel viewed our family relationship not as one between equal adults, but as one in which they had authority to make decisions about my life regardless of my preferences, capabilities, or legal rights. We've consulted with elder law attorneys about the procedures for protecting family members when seniors are making decisions that put them at risk, Rachel had added, making clear that they'd been researching legal strategies for gaining control of my affairs against my will. There are established procedures for family intervention when elderly relatives are no longer capable of making appropriate decisions about their safety and financial security. The implication that I was mentally incompetent and that they had legal grounds for seeking guardianship had been both shocking and infuriating, particularly given my continued professional activity, my successful management of complex financial affairs, and my obvious competence in all areas of daily living and business judgment. That evening, after Derek and Rachel had left, I'd made the decision that would change everything forever and would demonstrate exactly what happened when people underestimated someone with my banking expertise, professional relationships, and determination to protect my rights and assets, against family members who had mistaken generosity for weakness and assumed that age meant vulnerability to manipulation and control. Rather than accepting their ultimatum or engaging in further family negotiations that they clearly viewed as formalities before implementing their predetermined plans, I would use my 40 years of commercial banking expertise to demonstrate that some people fight back with financial strategies that permanently reshape family dynamics and business relationships in ways that create consequences lasting for generations. Chapter evening that would become known as the incident occurred just 3 days later, on October 16, 2023, when Derek and Rachel had arranged what they'd described as a family outing to tour the Golden Years Assisted Living Facility, which they'd apparently scheduled without my consent and had presented as a non-negotiable family commitment that I was expected to attend, regardless of my repeatedly expressed opposition to their relocation plans. "Mom, we've scheduled the tour for 2 p.m. this afternoon," Derek had announced during a phone call that morning, using a tone that had suggested my participation was required rather than requested. "Rachel and I will pick you up at 1:30 and we can have dinner afterwards to discuss the arrangements and timeline for your move." The assumption that I would participate in touring a facility that I had no intention of moving to had been the final demonstration of their complete disregard for my autonomy and their presumptuous belief that they could simply announce decisions about my life and expect my compliance regardless of my own preferences or clearly stated opposition to their plans. My response had been to agree to accompany them, while secretly planning to use the outing as an opportunity to demonstrate exactly what happened when people assumed they could manipulate and control someone with my resources and determination to protect my independence and dignity. The drive to the assisted living facility had been approximately 30 minutes from my downtown apartment, through Denver's southern suburbs to a location in Littleton that had been specifically chosen for its distance from urban amenities and its institutional atmosphere that would have made it impossible for me to maintain the kind of active, independent lifestyle that I'd carefully developed for my retirement years. During the drive, Derek and Rachel had continued their pressure campaign with what had appeared to be carefully planned arguments about the benefits of supervised living and the risks associated with my continued independence, demonstrating their complete failure to understand that their manipulation tactics were actually strengthening my resolve to teach them a comprehensive lesson about the consequences of underestimating someone with my capabilities and resources. "Mom, you're going to love the social activities and the security of having medical staff available 24 hours a day," Rachel had said during the drive, continuing to present the relocation as though my acceptance was inevitable. "The tour is going To show you that assisted living can actually provide more independence and social opportunities than trying to manage everything yourself in such a large apartment. But what Derek and Rachel hadn't anticipated was that I'd been using the 3 days since their ultimatum to implement the first phases of a comprehensive financial strategy that would permanently protect my assets and independence while demonstrating the true extent of my banking expertise and the devastating consequences of attempting to manipulate someone with unlimited access to commercial lending resources and 4 decades of experience in restructuring business relationships. The tour of Golden Years Assisted Living had been exactly as depressing and institutional as I'd expected, featuring small apartments with limited storage, communal dining facilities that eliminated cooking independence, and the kind of supervised activities and restricted schedules that would have destroyed everything I valued about my retirement lifestyle and personal autonomy. "This is the apartment we think would be perfect for you," the facility director had explained, while showing us a cramped 1-bedroom unit that had been approximately 1/4 the size of my penthouse and had featured none of the urban amenities, mountain views, or luxury finishes that had made my current home both comfortable and inspiring. But I had participated in the tour with apparent interest while secretly using the time to finalize the mental calculations and strategic planning. That would guide my response to Derek and Rachel's ultimatum, knowing that their presumptuous behavior during this outing would provide the final justification I needed for implementing financial consequences that would permanently alter our family relationships and business arrangements. The breaking point had occurred during the drive back to my apartment, when Derek and Rachel had announced that they'd already submitted applications and deposits for my admission to Golden Years, revealing that they'd been making binding financial commitments on my behalf without my knowledge or consent, apparently, assuming that their pressure campaign would eventually overcome my resistance to their plans. "Mom, we've taken care of all the paperwork and financial arrangements," Derek had announced while driving north on Santa Fe Drive, making it clear that they viewed my participation in their plans as inevitable, regardless of my continued opposition. "The admission process takes about 2 weeks, so we should be able to have you moved in by November 1st, which will give us time to coordinate the apartment transition and business restructuring." The revelation that they'd been making binding commitments on my behalf had been the final demonstration of their complete disrespect for my autonomy and their dangerous assumption that they could simply implement their plans regardless of my legal rights or personal preferences. "Derek, please pull over at that gas station," I'd said, pointing to a Conoco station at the intersection of Santa Fe Drive and Hampton Avenue. "I need to use the restroom and make a phone call." But what I'd actually needed was to implement the final phase of my strategic response to their ultimatum, using the secure phone connection in my purse to contact my banking colleagues and authorize the financial transactions that would permanently resolve our family conflict, while demonstrating the true extent of my resources and determination. The phone call had taken approximately 15 minutes, during which I'd spoken with Patricia Chen at First National Bank of Denver to authorize the immediate termination of all business credit lines and construction loans that had been secured using my personal guarantees, the freezing of all business accounts that bore my signature, and the acceleration of loan payments that would require Derek to provide alternative financing or collateral within 72 hours to avoid default and foreclosure proceedings. "Patricia, I need you to implement the financial restructuring we discussed last week," I'd said during the call, referring to contingency plans I'd developed after Derek and Rachel's ultimatum dinner. "Please initiate immediate review of all accounts and credit facilities associated with Martinez and Associates Development, and require Derek Martinez to provide independent financing and collateral for all outstanding obligations within the minimum notice period required by our loan agreements." The financial strategy I'd been developing had been designed to accomplish several objectives simultaneously: protect my personal assets against Derek and Rachel's manipulation attempts, demonstrate the true extent of their dependence on my creditworthiness and banking relationships, and create immediate financial pressure that would force them to understand the consequences of treating my support as entitlement rather than partnership that required ongoing respect and consideration. When I'd returned to Derek's car after Completing the phone call, I'd announced my decision with the same casual tone they'd been using to announce their plans for my life. Derek, I've decided that I'm not interested in touring any more assisted living facilities, and I won't be moving from my apartment, I'd said. Please take me home now, and we can discuss the changes I've made to our business arrangements during our next family meeting. But what Derek and Rachel couldn't have anticipated was that the changes I'd referenced would fundamentally alter every aspect of their financial security and business operations, demonstrating exactly what happened when people assumed they could control someone with unlimited access to commercial banking resources and 4 decades of experience in financial leverage and business restructuring. Mom, what do you mean by changes to our business arrangements? Rachel had asked, apparently, sensing that something significant had shifted during my phone call. You'll understand everything when we meet tomorrow morning at my apartment, I'd replied. I think you'll find that some business relationships require more respect and consideration than you've been providing. The drive back to my apartment had been completed in increasingly uncomfortable silence, as Derek and Rachel had gradually begun to sense that their carefully planned manipulation strategy might have triggered consequences they hadn't anticipated and weren't prepared to handle. But the true scope of their miscalculation wouldn't become apparent until the following morning, when they'd arrived at my apartment expecting to continue their pressure campaign about assisted living arrangements, only to discover that the banking relationships and business assets they'd been taking for granted had been fundamentally restructured in ways that would permanently alter their financial security and professional prospects. The next morning, October 17, 2023, Derek and Rachel had arrived at my penthouse apartment at 9 a.m., apparently expecting to continue their manipulation campaign with additional arguments about the benefits of supervised living and the urgency of making relocation decisions before winter weather made moving more complicated. But instead of finding a vulnerable elderly woman who could be pressured into compliance with their plans, they'd discovered that they were about to receive notification of financial consequences that would demonstrate exactly why underestimating someone with my banking, expertise, and professional relationships was the most costly mistake they could possibly make. Mom, we've brought some additional information about the assisted living options, Derek had said upon arriving, producing more brochures and contracts that he'd apparently prepared for what he'd expected would be the final negotiation before my acceptance of their relocation plans. Before we discuss anything else, I'd replied, I think you should review these documents that explain the changes I've made to our business relationship. The documents I'd handed them had included copies of loan termination notices, account closure authorizations, and personal guarantee withdrawals that had been processed by First National Bank of Denver during the previous 18 hours, effectively removing my financial support from every aspect of Derek's business operations while requiring him to provide independent financing and collateral within 72 hours to avoid default proceedings. What is this? Derek had asked, scanning the legal documents with increasing alarm as he'd begun to understand the scope of the financial restructuring that had occurred overnight. These are notifications that I've withdrawn my personal guarantees and terminated my financial involvement in Martinez and Associates development, I'd explained. Effective immediately, you're responsible for providing independent financing and collateral for all business operations, including the $2.8 million in outstanding construction loans and the $1.4 million business credit line that have been securing your development projects. The shock on Derek and Rachel's faces as they'd realized that their entire business empire had been built on financial foundations that I could remove at will had been the first indication that they were beginning to understand the magnitude of their miscalculation about my capabilities and resources. Mom, you can't do this, Rachel had said, apparently assuming that family relationships created some kind of obligation for me to continue supporting business operations, regardless of how they treated me personally. Derek's business depends on those credit lines and loan guarantees. You'll destroy everything we've built. Everything you've built was made possible by my creditworthiness and banking relationships, I'd replied. If Derek wants to continue operating the business, He'll need to secure independent financing based on his own credit profile and business assets, just like every other developer who doesn't have access to a commercial banking executive's personal guarantees. But the financial restructuring had been only the beginning of the comprehensive response I'd implemented to address their systematic disrespect and manipulation attempts. The documents had also included notifications about changes to personal, loan arrangements, credit card authorizations, and co-signed obligations that would affect every aspect of their family's financial security and lifestyle. I've also withdrawn my co-signatures from your personal loans, including your home mortgage, vehicle financing, and the children's educational expenses. I'd continued. Your lenders will be contacting you within the next few days to arrange alternative financing or collateral for these obligations. The gradual realization that their entire lifestyle had been dependent on my financial backing had created an atmosphere of panic and desperation that had demonstrated exactly how little they'd understood about their actual financial position and business capabilities without my continued support and expertise. But Derek has been managing the business successfully for 5 years, Rachel had argued, apparently still not understanding that Derek's success had been entirely dependent on access to financing and business relationships that his limited credit history and business experience never could have obtained independently. Derek has been managing projects that were financed using my personal guarantees and secured through my banking relationships, I'd corrected. Without those advantages, he'll need to demonstrate that he can obtain financing and maintain business operations based on his own creditworthiness and industry relationships. The financial pressure had been designed to create immediate consequences, while also providing Derek with opportunities to demonstrate whether he could actually operate the business independently, as he'd been claiming during his recent demands, for complete autonomy over business decisions that affected my financial interests and professional reputation. But the most devastating aspect of my response had been the systematic withdrawal of my support from every aspect of their financial security, creating a comprehensive test of whether their confidence and presumptuous behavior had been based on actual capabilities or simply on their access to resources and relationships that belonged to me rather than to them. You have 72 hours to arrange alternative financing for all business and personal obligations, I'd explained. If you can demonstrate that Derek's business expertise and your family's financial management can function independently, then you'll have proven that your concerns about my competence were justified and that you no longer need my involvement in your financial affairs. The challenge had been specifically designed to provide them with opportunities to prove their claims about Derek's business capabilities and their family's financial independence, while also demonstrating the true extent of their dependence on resources and relationships that they'd been taking for granted while planning to relocate me to supervised housing. The 72-hour deadline had expired on October 20th, 2023, with Derek and Rachel completely unable to secure alternative financing for any of their business or personal obligations, demonstrating that their entire financial security had been dependent on access to my creditworthiness and banking relationships, rather than on Derek's supposed business expertise or their family's independent financial capabilities. The business operations had been suspended when Derek had been unable to provide collateral for construction loans. The family home had entered foreclosure proceedings when they'd been unable to qualify for mortgage financing without my co-signature, and their credit card accounts had been frozen when they'd been unable to provide security deposits for unsecured credit lines that had been authorized based on my personal guarantees. "Mom, please reconsider this," Derek had begged during a desperate phone call on October 21st. "We were wrong about the assisted living plans, and we want to continue our business partnership exactly as it was before. We understand now that we need your expertise and support to be successful." But the apology had come too late to reverse. Consequences that had been specifically designed to be permanent and educational, demonstrating that some actions create results that cannot be undone through belated expressions of regret or changed behavior. "Derek, you and Rachel made it very clear that you viewed my continued involvement in business decisions as interference rather than valuable partnership," I'd replied. You've now had the opportunity to demonstrate your independent capabilities, and the results speak for themselves. The comprehensive failure of Derek's attempts to secure independent financing had been followed by the systematic collapse of every aspect of their financial security and lifestyle, as lenders, creditors, and service providers had discovered that their credit profiles and asset bases were insufficient to support the obligations and expenses that had been manageable only with my financial backing. The business had been forced into bankruptcy when Derek had been unable to complete contracted projects without access to construction financing. Their home had been sold at foreclosure auction when they'd been unable to maintain mortgage payments without my co-signature, and their children had been withdrawn from private schools when tuition payments had become impossible without access to credit lines that had been secured using my personal guarantees. But perhaps the most devastating consequence had been the revelation to Denver's business and banking communities that Derek's success had been entirely dependent on his mother's financial backing rather than on independent business expertise, destroying his professional reputation and eliminating future opportunities for business partnerships or employment in Colorado's competitive commercial development industry. The word throughout the industry is that Derek Martinez was never actually a competent developer, Patricia Chen had reported during one of our regular consultations. Everyone now understands that his success was entirely due to your financial support and banking expertise, and no one is willing to work with someone who tried to manipulate and control his own mother after she'd made his career possible. The professional consequences had extended to Rachel's real estate career, as her involvement in the assisted living manipulation scheme had become widely known throughout Denver's real estate community, destroying her reputation and eliminating referral relationships that had been essential for her business success. 6 months later, Derek and Rachel had been forced to relocate to Phoenix, Arizona, where Derek had found employment as a construction supervisor, earning approximately 1/10 of the income he'd generated during our business partnership, while Rachel had abandoned real estate to work as a retail manager in a discount furniture store. The children, Sophia and Miguel, had been enrolled in public schools and were living in a rental apartment in one of Phoenix's less desirable neighborhoods, experiencing exactly the kind of financial insecurity and reduced opportunities that Derek and Rachel had been trying to avoid by gaining control of my assets and relocating me to supervised housing that would have eliminated my autonomy while providing them with unrestricted access to my accumulated wealth. Grandma Dorothy, why did Mom and Dad make you so angry that you took away our house and our schools? 8-year-old Sophia had asked during a supervised phone call that had been arranged through family court after I'd filed for grandparent visitation. Rights. My explanation had been age-appropriate but honest. Sophia, sometimes adults make very poor decisions about how to treat family members who have helped them. Your parents thought they could control my life and take my money without respecting my choices or treating me with kindness. They learned that some actions have consequences that last for a very long time. The children's gradual understanding of their parents' behavior had created family dynamics that had been both painful for Derek and Rachel and educational for Sophia and Miguel about the importance of respecting elderly family members and understanding that financial security depends on hard work, expertise, and maintaining relationships based on mutual respect rather than manipulation and entitlement. 2 years later, the consequences of Derek and Rachel's manipulation attempt had continued to compound, as their bankruptcy and foreclosure records had made it impossible for them to obtain credit for home purchases or business ventures, while their damaged reputations had limited employment opportunities and social relationships throughout their new community in Arizona. Mom, we understand now that we made terrible mistakes, Derek had written in a letter that had arrived on the 2nd anniversary of their relocation. We hope that someday you might be willing to forgive us and help us rebuild some kind of relationship with you and give our children opportunities to know their grandmother. But forgiveness and relationship restoration would require more than apologies and expressions of regret. The systematic nature of their manipulation, their willingness to threaten my autonomy and independence, and their presumptuous assumption that they could control my life while benefiting from my assets had created violations of trust and respect that had consequences extending far beyond temporary financial difficulties. Derek, I'd replied in a carefully worded letter, family relationships require ongoing respect, consideration, and appreciation for each member's contributions and autonomy. Your behavior demonstrated that you viewed me as someone whose life could be controlled and whose assets could be managed according to your preferences rather than mine. Those attitudes create consequences that cannot be easily reversed. The educational value of their experience had extended beyond our family to influence estate planning and elder rights protection throughout Colorado's legal and financial services communities, as my strategic response had become a model for how elderly people with significant assets could protect themselves against family manipulation while maintaining their independence and dignity. Dorothy Martinez has created a new paradigm for elder financial protection. Professor Janet Chen at the University of Colorado Law School had written in an article for the Colorado Law Review. Her strategic use of commercial banking expertise demonstrates how elderly people with professional knowledge and financial leverage can protect themselves against family exploitation while creating permanent consequences for manipulation and disrespect. My story had been featured in multiple professional publications and elder rights conferences as an example of how sophisticated financial planning could prevent family abuse while ensuring that elderly people's autonomy and dignity were protected, regardless of family pressure or manipulation attempts. The most meaningful recognition had come when the Colorado Department of Human Services had invited me to serve on their Elder Rights Advisory Committee, providing guidance for policy development and resource allocation that would help other elderly people protect themselves against financial exploitation and family manipulation throughout the state. Dorothy, your experience demonstrates that the best protection against elder abuse is often preventive financial planning that eliminates opportunities for family exploitation. Dr. Sarah Williams, Director of Colorado's Elder Protection Services, had explained during my committee appointment. Your strategic response has influenced our approach to helping elderly people maintain independence while protecting their assets against family members who might view inheritance as entitlement rather than gift. The advisory committee work had provided opportunities to share my experience and educate other elderly people about financial strategies for protecting their autonomy, while also consulting with banking professionals about developing services and protections specifically designed to prevent the kind of manipulation that Derek and Rachel had attempted. But perhaps the most satisfying long-term consequence had been the establishment of the Dorothy Martinez Foundation for Elder Financial Protection, a charitable organization funded by the profits from real estate investments that I'd made using the assets I'd recovered from Derek's failed business ventures. The foundation's mission had been designed to reflect my values and professional legacy, providing financial education to elderly people facing family pressure, funding legal assistance for seniors dealing with manipulation attempts, supporting research into elder financial protection strategies, and maintaining my penthouse apartment as a resource center for organizations working on aging and financial security issues. The Dorothy Martinez Foundation will ensure that your commitment to elder financial protection continues helping vulnerable seniors long after your individual advocacy work is complete, Foundation Director Dr. Patricia Morrison had explained during our planning meetings. Your apartment will serve as both a symbol of successful elder independence and a practical resource for organizations working to protect elderly people's autonomy and financial security. The foundation structure had also included provisions for Sophia and Miguel to receive educational scholarships and financial literacy training if they demonstrated understanding of the importance of respecting elderly family members and protecting vulnerable people against financial exploitation, providing opportunities for positive family legacy despite their parents' behavior. I want Sophia and Miguel to understand that family relationships should be based on respect and mutual support, rather than manipulation and entitlement, I'd explained to the foundation board. If they develop into adults who protect vulnerable people and use their education to serve others rather than exploit family relationships, they'll have opportunities to benefit from resources that were protected against their parents' attempts at manipulation. The educational provisions had created additional motivation for Derek and Rachel to ensure that their children understood the importance of treating elderly family members with respect and dignity, while also providing Sophia and Miguel with resources for building successful lives based on their own efforts, rather than expectations of inherited wealth or family financial support. The 3-year anniversary of my financial response had been marked by a celebration at my penthouse apartment, hosted by the foundation and attended by banking professionals, elder rights advocates, and community leaders who had been inspired by my story and wanted to support continued work in protecting elderly people's financial security and personal autonomy. Dorothy Martinez has demonstrated that age is not a limitation on strategic thinking, financial expertise, or the ability to create permanent consequences for family betrayal, keynote speaker Judge Maria Rodriguez had said during the anniversary celebration. Her financial strategy has protected not just her own independence, but has established new standards for elder financial protection that will benefit vulnerable seniors throughout Colorado for generations to come. The celebration had been held in my apartment's main living areas, overlooking the Denver skyline and Rocky Mountain views that would remain mine for life, while ultimately serving community purposes that reflected my values and professional commitment to protecting vulnerable people against financial exploitation and family manipulation. As I'd stood in my spectacular penthouse that evening, surrounded by banking colleagues, community leaders, and foundation supporters who understood and appreciated my commitment to elder financial protection, I'd felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge against Derek and Rachel, and everything to do with the knowledge that my strategic response had created lasting positive change for vulnerable elderly people throughout the region. The final irony had occurred just 6 months ago, when Derek and Rachel had been forced to declare bankruptcy for the second time due to the combination of ongoing financial struggles, damaged credit profiles, and employment limitations that had resulted from their failed attempt to manipulate and control me. Their assumption that they could exploit an elderly woman's supposed vulnerability had instead cost them their home, their business, their professional reputations, and their financial security, while permanently eliminating any possibility of benefiting from my accumulated wealth or expertise. Dorothy, I thought you should know that Derek and Rachel filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy again last month, Patricia Chen had reported during our most recent consultation. Their financial difficulties have continued to compound, and they've lost the rental apartment in Phoenix. Derek is apparently working temporary construction jobs, and Rachel is unemployed. The news of their continued financial struggles had been both confirmation of the permanent nature of consequences that result from attempting to manipulate family members and a reminder that some actions create results that extend far beyond the immediate conflict, reshaping lives and opportunities in ways that last for generations. They thought they could abandon me on a dark highway and control my life, I'd reflected during our conversation. What they actually did was inspire the most comprehensive financial response of my career, while learning that some 70-year-old women fight back with banking expertise that permanently alters family relationships and financial futures. Standing in my magnificent penthouse apartment this morning, overlooking the Denver skyline that includes buildings financed through deals I'd structured and business relationships I'd developed, I feel a deep satisfaction that comes from knowing that my response to family betrayal has created positive change that will benefit vulnerable elderly people for generations to come, while demonstrating that respect and autonomy are not negotiable regardless of age or family relationships. The penthouse apartment has become more than just my home. It has become a symbol of successful elder financial protection and a practical resource for organizations working to prevent family exploitation and maintain elderly people's independence and dignity. My strategic response has inspired hundreds of other seniors to seek similar protections, and my story has changed community attitudes about aging, financial planning, and the importance of respecting elderly people's rights regardless of family, relationships, or inheritance expectations. But perhaps most importantly, my financial strategy has demonstrated that experience, expertise, and strategic thinking are not diminished by age when they are supported by professional knowledge and determination to protect what one has worked a lifetime to build. Dorothy, your financial response has become the gold standard for elder protection throughout the Rocky Mountain region, Dr. Patricia Morrison had said during our most recent foundation meeting. You've proven that family betrayal can have permanent consequences, and that some people have the knowledge and resources to protect themselves completely against manipulation and exploitation while creating lasting positive change for vulnerable people throughout their communities. The grandchildren, Sophia and Miguel, now aged 11 and 9, have begun to understand through our supervised visits that their grandmother's financial victory represents something more significant than a family property dispute. It represents the principle that respect and autonomy are not negotiable regardless of age or family relationships, and that some people have the expertise and determination necessary to create permanent consequences for betrayal and manipulation. Grandma Dorothy, I understand now why you had to take away Mom and Dad's money, 11-year-old Sophia had said during our most recent video call. They tried to put you in a place you didn't want to live, and they tried to take control of your life like you were a little kid instead of a grown-up who earned everything yourself. The children's understanding of the broader principles involved in my financial strategy has provided hope that future generations will approach aging and family relationships with greater respect for individual autonomy and recognition that experience and expertise are assets to be valued rather than limitations to be managed or exploited. If someone in your life is trying to control your decisions while treating you as incompetent based on assumptions about age or family relationships, remember my story. Remember that family relationships don't give anyone authority over your assets or personal decisions, and that some people have the financial knowledge and professional resources necessary to protect themselves completely against manipulation and exploitation while creating lasting consequences for those who mistake generosity for weakness. Remember that the best response to people who try to abandon you on dark highways or force you into supervised housing is sometimes a comprehensive financial strategy that permanently reshapes family dynamics while demonstrating that respect and autonomy are not negotiable at any age, and that some dreams of manipulation are too dangerous to pursue against someone with the expertise and determination to fight back with consequences that last for generations. What's your story? Have you ever had to protect yourself against family members who assumed they could control your decisions or exploit your trust for their own benefit? Share it in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more stories about turning family betrayal into lasting vindication and proving that some people fight back with financial strategies that permanently protect their independence while creating positive change for vulnerable people throughout their communities. Because sometimes the most important battles are not just about protecting your own assets and autonomy, but about establishing principles and precedents that will protect other vulnerable people against similar exploitation and manipulation for generations to come. Derek and Rachel thought they could abandon me on a dark highway and control my life based on assumptions about my age and vulnerability. What they actually did was inspire the most comprehensive elder financial protection strategy in Colorado history, while learning that some 73-year-old women fight back with banking expertise that creates permanent consequences more far-reaching and more costly than anything they could ever imagine. Sometimes the people who think your best days are behind you are about to discover you're actually someone with the financial knowledge and strategic thinking necessary to outmaneuver them completely while building a legacy that will protect vulnerable people and advance financial security for generations to come. That's a lesson worth $4.2 million in protected assets, a charitable foundation that will continue my work in perpetuity, and the knowledge that family betrayal ultimately led to positive change that will benefit thousands of elderly people throughout Colorado for decades to come. Justice served. Legacy established. Elder rights advanced. Community protected. Family betrayal transformed into lasting positive change. The view from 73 is spectacular when you're surrounded by financial protections rather than family manipulation. When your assets are permanently secured through strategic planning that reflects your values rather than family greed. And when your professional legacy continues through charitable work that will protect vulnerable people long after you're gone. Derek and Rachel learned that abandoning someone on a dark highway was the beginning of the most expensive financial lesson they'd ever receive, the most comprehensive demonstration of elder financial protection in state history, and the most costly mistake they'd ever make in terms of their financial security, professional reputation, and family relationships. Respect your elders, especially when they have the banking expertise to permanently reshape not just your financial future, but the entire landscape of elder financial protection in ways that will influence policy and practice for generations to come. Because sometimes the best response to abandonment is not just personal vindication, but creating lasting change that ensures other vulnerable people will never face the same exploitation and manipulation that you successfully defeated through financial expertise, strategic thinking, and unlimited determination to protect what you worked your entire life to build. The Dorothy Martinez Foundation will continue this work long after I'm gone, ensuring that my response to family betrayal creates positive consequences that will protect elderly people's independence and financial security for generations to come. That's a legacy worth fighting for, and a victory that proves some battles are worth winning, not just for yourself, but for everyone who will benefit from the principles and protections you establish through your courage and expertise. Sometimes, taking everything with your name on it is just the beginning of changing the world. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.